All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Jennifer Weber, and welcome to the Summit, Your Soul's Journey. Transform your life by using your divinely given intuition. And with me to talk today about intuition is Dr. Therese Rowley. And Dr. Therese, well, let's read a little bit about her from her bio here. She's a CEO of Accelerated Alignment and the founder of Conscious Business Network. And for over 25 years, Accelerated Alignment has facilitated conscious leadership and cultures through a combination of strategic intuitive consulting and coaching, educational workshops, and personal insight sessions. One thing I found was kind of interesting about your bio here. Dr. Rowley works with parents who have intuitively and spiritually gifted children to educate them about their child's intuitive intelligence and offer insight through intuitive readings and healings about their child's purpose and gifts. So I think that's fascinating, and I'd love to know more about that. And so welcome. Thanks so much
Thank
for
you.
participating. Thank
Thank you,
you.
Jennifer. Great to be here.
Wonderful. So yeah, I mean, I would love to hear some more about that and your intuitive, working with these intuitive children. But a little bit about you first. First of all, now, do you consider yourself an intuitive as well, or are you just fascinated with the subject, so you studied a lot more about it? How did you get to do this work?
Well, I consider myself a mystic with psychic symptoms.
Okay, I like that.
So I spent a lot of years from the time I was 6 years old going to Catholic Mass every day. And at some point, about 9 years old, I started to be taken out of body a lot, which is not how I would have described it at the time.
Yeah.
But it was certainly being one with the light. And in that relationship I had, in my case, it was with Christ. That was through my particular spiritual faith. It was really listening in to believing without seeing and trusting without evidence. And so I would be given, I want to say, discipline and exercises that I would hear to do, and I would do that and apply it daily and I probably did that for about 20 years. And then when I was in, after college, I went through a kind of dark night of the soul where I wasn't able to discern. I used to be able to see spirits, hear them, understand them in many different ways, get in a knowing, and then it went all into like a spiritual amnesia. And it was at that point I went on a kind of a journey to find out what's the fastest method for transformation on the planet. And that was what I wanted to do. And what's interesting about that is that now I understand that part of what my gifts are as a clairsentient is that feeling other people's feelings. I think most people that do that on steroids, when they feel other people's feelings really a lot, they go into healing because in order to not be in pain, they have to heal someone else.
Right. That's right.
So I think that's probably what prompted me to go on the journey and really to understand what was happening when I would, and I've experienced channeling, I've experienced clairaudient, clairsentient, clairvoyant, all kinds of the intuitive realms. And I had to understand that as my faith matured and changed and understand it even outside of the realms of the Catholic map of reality.
Yes.
So I ended up going out and studying about 50 different kinds of alternative therapies back in when they were just burgeoning, and really looked for that which was going to help people move from fear to creativity, from reactivity to creativity. And that's kind of how I got started. So I'm a skilled intuitive because I have been practicing that gift that I was given when I was born, I suppose.
Yes.
And I've been practicing it daily for my whole life. So
Wonderful.
I would call myself a skilled intuitive, but mostly with psychic symptoms.
Wonderful. I love it. So so you really can relate to the children who have this gift, and you can really work with them on that. I think that's wonderful because children don't, they know it, and intuitively they know they had this gift of some sort, but I'm sure, being an intuitive child, having been an intuitive child myself, and possibly having an intuitive child, my child now understands that it's okay because, mommy has it too. And so it's okay, it's a beautiful thing and it's a gift. And, but not every child is in environment where this is an acceptable form of expression, and to say what it is they're seeing and feeling, and so forth. And then there are parents who don't understand it themselves. So how do you, when you're working with families and when you're working with parents in particular, how do you talk to them about this? What are some of the first things that you go into discussion about this, with them, and kind of give them the basic understanding what their child is doing and what their child has, so that they can foster this as opposed to squelch it,
Right.
what that intuition is?
Right. Well, I got into reading children because I work a lot with CEOs in business, and they would become stuck because their children were stuck. So I would ask them to give me the name of their children, and that's how I started to read children.
Yeah, okay.
And then I could see how children are perceiving. I see their purpose. I see why they're doing what they do.
Mm-hmm.
And then I can give the parents enough information that they know that's quote unquote their child that I'm describing. And then I can help them understand how to support them,
Mm-hmm.
what kind of gifts they have, why it's showing up the way it does. And sometimes I can even see how their brain is working and their energy field is wired. And sometimes I can facilitate some healing there so that they can find a softer experience of life, if you will.
Right.
But the idea is that, and I executive produced a video on the misdiagnosis of gifted children, and interviewed pediatric neuropsychologists and psychiatrists and MDs and profoundly gifted faculty members and parents themselves, with children who are twice exceptional. The National Association of Gifted Children president, supporting the emotional needs of gifted children, who funded the DVD that I did. So the idea was that all of these, when I started doing research, I found over 5.5 million children on psychotropic drugs for behavior problems alone.
Yes, yeah.
And when we had 49 cases of bird flu, we started calling it an epidemic. We have 5.5 million children on psychotropic drugs that have the same chemical makeup as crystal meth as you can get on the planet.
Wow.
And nobody seems to be thinking this is a problem because it's being perpetrated by doctors,
right,
who are prescribing. Not that they're at fault or anything, but
sure,
most of the time they have a child with a behavior that doesn't fit into a educational system that's really fit for their kind of makeup. And
right.
so they're told that they need to get drugged back into a normality into which they don't fit on purpose.
Right.
So there's a reason that they're here this way. And we don't have a paradigm or a landscape that helps us understand them differently, so we can serve them differently and support them differently.
That's right.
So that's why I'm doing the work that I'm doing, because I feel like what we need to do is really understand that these children are here to solve complex global problems that we cannot solve with what we have today.
Absolutely.
And so what we're going to have to do is help support them, and we don't know how, so it's nobody's fault. And I'm telling you, and I have one of these myself, my daughter's adopted from China, and these kids who are leaders, they're not easy to parent.
Sure.
They already know they're like, I keep telling her, I was your butler in another life, not this one. I just have to get that straight with you. Just not clear about that.
Yeah, not right now, my parents.
Right.
It's like on your parents.
Yeah, who's the boss of who here? And I'm telling you, it's not you this time, not this time. So,
right.
like that. So I started working with parents because of the business leaders that needed to stop being stressed by their kids, and ended up understanding that these kids are here as our future leaders. And since I'm a business professional, that's my education is all in business. I have an MBA, I have a Ph.D. in organizational transformation. So I always look at systems, at the landscape, and changing the culture. So I worked for 30 years changing the landscape of allowing women and diverse others into corporations with a better mindset, higher level mindset. And now I see the next thing that needs to be changed is society's understanding of children and why they came, what they're up to. So that kind of gives you an idea of why I'm involved in this. The what of it is that I try to help educate parents on intuitive intelligence. What are receptor sites? How do kids process? How do they then, what's the capacity they have to process the information that they're receiving? I love when teachers say, they say, well, Johnny's just not paying attention. Well, I say Johnny's paying attention in ways that you cannot even have the capacity to understand. So it's not
Absolutely.
they're not paying attention. The question is, to what are they paying attention?
That's right. That's
Right?
right.
And then when we understand that, how can we use that as a pathway through which we can support them in then, increasing their curiosity about other aspects of learning, and use that as a foundation. So I educate parents on what intuitive intelligence is, on what are the different kinds, on what their child is, and then looking at that, I also look at why did you pick them and why did they pick you, so I can read, I use, other people call it past lives, some people call it archetypes, some people call it collective unconscious. I don't really care what you call it, as long as it resonates and it works. It's the truth wrapped in a story. So I talk about, here's why you picked them. What you're learning from that child is this on an interior level. You might be learning, that you had a fear about this and they had a fear about that, and you got together, or you promised to do this in another life, and they resonate with the story. And they see, yes, and that's exactly how I do, resonate with my child now. And so they have now the understanding of, this is why I'm with my child. This is what my child is helping me learn. This is what's helping them learn. And then I give specifics. And if they have things like, oh, here's 3 schools, I can say this school will support, that school won't, here's why, here's what. So we can go all the way to the level of boots on the ground support. Most important thing is, how is your child gifted, and how can you best. Sometimes I give them words. If you say to them, something about how they, I love the way you observe and wait before you participate, because that's how they look at the whole system. You will be speaking into their gift, and they will feel seen, heard, and understood.
Right.
If you say to them, just go and do that. Come on, what's the matter? You can go participate. You're not seeing them, hearing them, or understanding them, and they will accept you. So sometimes it gets to that level, but that's the what and the how of it.
I love it. Well, I think it's a beautiful thing to support them in that, as opposed to, you're giving them an avenue to then explore and to accept and to understand what it is they have. And, there's a friend of mine who is highly intuitive, and she and I are kind of working through some healing of her 3-year-old self, who went through a period, she was raised in Russia, and her family, they're just very pragmatic, and this intuitive child of 3 who was saying things that she's not supposed to say, and expressing this other realm that she was tapping into, was to her family was very dangerous to be speaking in this manner. And they were trying to keep her in survival mode, as opposed to allowing her to tap into that gift, that the beautiful gift of who she was and who she still is, but had to suppress. And so, it's interesting that you talk about the drugs. Unfortunately, what the families have put their children on. Her, at 3 years old, she was put on an antidepressant. And I guess that was to suppress that gift and that her speaking. And so she kind of went into this silence. She went into this terrible silence, and because she was drugged, really at that age, to suppress that gift, so that she wouldn't be saying it so much, and embarrassing her family, or embarrassing herself, or putting herself in danger, and so forth. So it's interesting to me, to this day, it's very hard for her to express her gift. So, she has it. But to allow these children to express their intuitive gift and skills, and to have it fully developed, they're really here to heal us. And, intuitives and empaths and clairsentients, clairvoyants, they're here to give a message to heal, because we really need it right now.
Well, I would like to say something, which is, I have a profound respect for parents who try their very best to keep their children safe.
Right.
In the way they understand safety. So I don't think of it as them trying to suppress a gift. I think of them as trying to keep their children safe in the way they know how to do it. And I'm telling you, I have worked with children who have tried to commit suicide by the time they're 5, not because they're suppressing their giftedness, but because they're wired in a way that is vibrating too fast for their body to compensate or help. And I'm telling you, those parents, God bless them, it's really how can we help heal and inform parents for themselves to be able to have a ground on which not only to understand, but themselves, I'm sure if I had some of those kids, I'd be on drugs. I don't know how they honestly, and so I never have a judgment about parents who choose drugs, because I think that there's very few alternatives that we offer parents that are raising children who are very difficult to parent. So I think it's really an educational and developmental track that we need to create.
Yeah.
And I'm working somewhat with there's a physician here who's duly certified as a pediatrician and a Chinese medicine physician as well. And sometimes I look at the children that he works with to help him understand how to treat the children diagnostically and otherwise. And sometimes it's about talking to the parents instead of the children, because the children are absorbing some of the parents' difficulties and they don't know it. So,
I see. Right.
So there's so many nuances.
A lot of layers.
I never judge anyone for their strategy in how to parent. Lord knows, if somebody judged me, I would say, yeah, you have a right to, because my kid, totally. Once you're a parent, there's not proud parenting moments for all of us, but I think that it's a matter of how do we contribute to a field of understanding that gives alternatives to children so that they can develop. And I did a Jedi camp one year just to see what would it be like if we gave children permission, and what would happen. I did it for tweens instead of for the little ones. It was very interesting. Like when I asked the kids, who are you? One of the kids said, and he was 15, I think, I'm an anxious and depressed teen. That's what he said. And I said, you're a what? But I'm an anxious and depressed. I said, who told you that?
Yeah.
I knew it didn't come from him. And he said, my psychiatrist told me that. And I said to him, well, here's the truth. You're a brilliant and sensitive teen who can feel other people's feelings and feels even into what the violence that's going on in the world, and you process it. So you're anxious. That's the truth of who you are. So you're a very brilliant and gifted, intuitive child, and this is what you're picking up. That's who you are, and you're a spirit who's expressing love this way. You're not, whoever said that, remember the words I am are very powerful. And after that, you always want to say, I'm a spirit who's expressing love in this way. This is what I'm choosing right now. And so it's a choice. And I've learned so much just watching how we try to keep children safe by the limit of our definition of safe. So we can't judge each other for that definition. We can only try to say, well, if you have a way of seeing, and my way of seeing happens to be beyond the physical. So if I can see people energetically, that's not something that's very much in common. As my brother says, your common sense is not common, Trees. So it's not common. So I can't judge someone when all they can see is a three-dimensional reality and they're trying to keep their child safe. When I can see a reality that's much broader, then it's my responsibility to contribute in a way that broadens the possibilities for them and in their support of their children.
I love that. Well, that is a very compassionate perspective. And it also is allowing then some ability for the parents to see a different way. And now they can have a chance to heal themselves and their parenting ways, that offers the child more and better avenues for expression. And I see where you're coming from with that, more of a compassionate perspective. And it really comes down to, offering them some tools and understanding for something that is very difficult to understand coming from their point of view.
Well, I have to say also, what's true is you can't have a relationship with someone else that you're not having with yourself. You can't, it's not possible, because as above, so below, as within, so without. It's impossible to have a relationship. So if your child is showing up in your life, then there's some aspect of that child that's in you. Right. And what I do with my clients is when we find out what that fear is, what that core fear is, and through a story, they begin to accept it and send compassion and forgiveness to themselves. And they heal that relationship with themselves. The power that they left behind comes back to them. And also, once they forgive themselves, what mattered to them, because what's mattering to them is fear surrounded by emotional body, surrounded by repetition and practice. Now this really matters to me. It matters that I'm not that, and I don't do this, and I don't do that. Once the story is told about why did this things start to matter to you. Oh, I open it, I start to feel compassion for myself. And guess what? I dedicate that to my children, and I dedicate that to my ancestors, because the Bible calls it the sins of the father. It's the things that the father or mother didn't deal with in their fear and I say, I have that fear too. I'll become your child. Now I'll have that fear. You have that fear. Now we're working on that fear together, trying to keep each other safe, right? And neither of us have it. But if you challenge me in ways where my strategies won't work, it'll cause me to open and heal. Well, if I can heal, so can you. And then I can send that healing down the line, up the line, and I've seen it happen. And all the healing goes up and down the line. So what we do as parents is say, where is it in me that needs, where my fears are, that I can release so they don't matter anymore? And now I shine again like the brilliant light that I am, and I send that light out. And then my children don't have to address that fear in the same way. And that's why I'm connected to them, because I have the opportunity on a spiritual level to heal up and down the line by my responsibility for my fear and for my light.
Absolutely. Wow. I love, so beautifully said. And while you're saying all this, I'm laughing because of what happened this morning between my daughter and I, my younger daughter. And it's so funny that they are so much a mirror of us. And my younger daughter she's a perfectionist, and she wants to be so good at everything and do everything just right. And I mean, this child, she's as smart as a whip, and just, straight A's, and she's one of the youngest kids in her class. Right. So, but there's just one thing that she forgets a lot lately, and it's been lately. And, I gave her some money to give to her art teacher, and she's supposed to donate to class and for supplies and whatever. Now we're talking 2 weeks of having this money, and she keeps forgetting every day for 2 weeks now. So she gets out of the car. I'm so stupid. I can't, something's wrong with me. I'm so stupid. And I'm like, oh my goodness, that's me. I'm not looking at all the brilliant things that I've done and all the things that I did well and all the, things that I'm excelling in. I'm looking at her going, how could this child think that? How could she think that? She's brilliant, And it makes me laugh. And I think, oh, child, you saying you're stupid is so far-fetched. But I could see that myself internally doing the same thing to myself.
So then you have the opportunity to say, okay, I'm going to now talk to the part of me that's the perfectionist. Where does that live in me?
Right.
And can say hello with compassion to it, and thank you for being here, and what a success you made of me, and how can I be your friend, and stay with it while it, when you experience the places where it gets you in trouble, can you stay with the pain that's also come out of that? And that's where the healing is, staying with the pain and befriending that part of yourself, because that part becomes us, right? Now I am the perfectionist. No, you're a spiritual being who's chosen to learn about love through the aspect of perfection and imperfection. And what have I learned about that? And how has this part taught me? And am I finished with it? And can I forgive myself for whatever it is that I didn't do perhaps in another life that got me to the place where I'll never make that mistake again? Sure. And now I'm going to do it perfectly. And then I'm going to have a kid show so I can really have compassion. Right?
Yes.
So
it's amazing. Yeah. So, and I'm talking to her in this loving manner, showing her how wonderful she is, how smart she is, how, in all these ways that she's so brilliant. And how could she possibly see herself as stupid? How could you can't possibly see yourself as,
So you're my mom. That's why you say that. You're my mom. And she misses it because it's not coming from you. Right?
Yes, she says yes, and she'll say, "But you're supposed to say that because you love me, And
yeah, you're my mom. That's what
you're my mom, right? And
so but from the inside.
Yeah, so it's just interesting. Like it feels like I'm talking to myself. I'm saying that I'm healing that part of me, and that's really interesting and beautifully said. Yeah. So thank you for sharing that part. I almost had you have to say that so I could see what occurred. And I was speaking really healing to my own child inside. Exactly. Indeed. Through my child.
Well done.
Yeah. Interesting. So now when you move this into the business realm, when you're working with people and you're coaching businesses and you're showing them this intuitive way, now, how is it that you can, so I'm just looking at my environment right now in a corporate environment in a pharmaceutical company, and how would you speak to someone in the business world in a way that you can get the intuition across to them that works and can help inform that business model? Or how do you get them there, basically? That's not too woo-woo for them.
Typically, I work with the CEOs, and the people who call me in are leaders who are going through some pretty significant change, just acquisitions or culture changes. And usually I know that they call me in because their soul is ready to go to the next level of consciousness, because you can't really run an organization without at a next level unless you yourself expand as a soul in your consciousness and your awareness. So that's typically who calls me, and I'm referred mostly. And so it's not like I don't teach people, here's your intuition and how to use it. I use my intuition to inform how to do large scale change in business and culture.
Okay.
Now, I have talked to people about that way, and that's, it's on my bucket list to create curriculum for children and adults on intuitive intelligence and assessments that I've got. I've got so much content in my little, I think of it as my dryer that's got every color of blood you could have in the same, we went into the same load, and it's all in there, and I take it out a little bit of time. But essentially, I see that there are certain leaders on the planet that are here to anchor in the new consciousness for where we're headed.
Yeah.
And I work a lot with those people. A lot of times they're working on the 7 areas of the world, like energy and transportation and the things, the food and things that are essential to our survival. And they're finding innovations and ways that we can connect, accelerate the democracy of that in ways that are business savvy. I work with, so I work a lot with leaders who are, I'm a special advisor to the Chicago's YWCA on social innovation and transformation. So let me give you an example when we talk about how this mindset works. So for me, if you don't have intuition as a leader in the 21st century, you're missing an essential literacy.
Right, I agree.
You will not be successful unless you are friends with your intuition. Now, you don't have to call it that.
Sure.
In fact, Harvard Business Review did a study on this a while ago and asked 100 CEOs that were the most successful in their sector to what they attributed their most phenomenal success. And 201, they said their intuition, but they didn't call it intuition.
Yeah, they used some other word.
No, I da.
Right, that's right.
And so what strikes me is that if they had said science or drugs is the reason that I got so successful, there would be 300 programs on science and 300 programs on drugs for how you can be successful. But what happens in the workplace is when you talk about intuition, even though that's what they attribute their highest success to, they call it woo-woo.
That's right.
A word that 2-year-olds use when they don't know what they don't know, which is because I think it's true. They don't know what they don't know.
That's
right. And I even introduced a package of intuitive intelligence to one CEO, and he said, oh, well, of course CEOs have intuition, but they're just born with it. They're just those people. No, everyone, if you didn't have intuition, you would be dead by now,
Yes, exactly.
And they have, name me someone who doesn't have that experience of knowing who's on the phone or someone they were thinking of just shows up, or show me an instance of one person that hasn't had an intuitive, and if you can, I'll show you a person in denial of their intuition. I can help them with that in a reading, but never mind. So, I think so it's no question that you need intuition in leadership.
Absolutely.
I'm focused on those who are using their intuition to create a model of oneness on the planet. So, for example, at the Y, one of the things that Dory McWhorter, who's the CEO of the Y, did was said, how do I partner with mission-driven businesses like we're the Y, and we have a 200,000 woman consumer group in lower resource community. And by the way, Uber wants to have 1 million women in cars by 2020. Okay, I'll give them access to my consumer group, and here's what I want in return. I want rides to interviews for every woman in the low-income community, regardless of what interview they're going to. And when a woman has, let's say, experience of domestic violence, instead of giving them a bus token to get to the hospital, you get a woman in an Uber car to drive them there for free. All right, that's just something we can, that's a value add. We're all going to raise the, and since then, by the way, their goal was to have 5,000 women in cars in 6 months. In 3 months, there were 15,000 women in Chicago that were. So the why is increasing economic development in low-resource communities by providing opportunities to the businesses who benefit from that. Do you see?
Benefit? Yes, it's a bigger picture.
It's not duality. It's not I have, you don't, I'll give to you, you'll get better.
Yeah.
If I give to you, I get better. We all get better.
We all get better. It's a whole.
This is the mindset. And what I'm trying to do is educate the business world, that marketplace, on this mindset for using business to advance society, to look at how do we work in collaboration and oneness. And intuition for me is absolutely a part of that. Of course, I can anything, anywhere, anytime I can read. But how do we create that into something that supports not only our own prosperity, but our mindset that we are all one, so that when we prosper and we reach out to someone else with a values-driven belief system, that I what you believe, that we then have prosperity for and sustainability for the planet. So
absolutely beautiful. It's beautiful.
I don't work as much on the line as I do with the leaders to get there.
I think it's amazing. And I think it's so well said. And I really, really resonate with that. And truly believe that the intuition is not just a gift to us as individuals. Our intuition informs us and helps us. It is a gift to us, yes, for sure. But what we have it for, the reason we have this intuition and this guidance, is to then take what it is within us that we've been born with, some gift, something that we're supposed to contribute, and then we go and do that thing that participates and then gives to the greater good. Right. And then, it has this value that's not just for ourselves, because it's the beauty of it and the amazing wisdom of it, and the amazing, just the brilliance of it really, is that not only do we get more fulfillment, more abundance, more value, happier, more peaceful, fulfilled lives ourselves, but in doing so and following this intuition, we also give something of value to the whole, just to the greater good.
If we used our intuition as cavemen and women not to be eaten by dinosaurs, our intuition again with towards the same end of survival. We're using our intuition to survive, and we happen to have a little more creativity at our fingertips to contribute to that. And I also want to say, having intuition and following it, not always joyful, happy, good.
That's so true.
I'm just saying, no. I'm saying hard, challenging. Wait a minute, this isn't what I had in mind. What do you mean I found my intuition and this is the result? Wait, I have to work through this too. Oh my gosh. It doesn't mean that you're going to get happy or joyful. What it means is it's going to take you on a journey to heal the parts of yourself that you came to heal, to address the parts of yourself that can live into its potential. Not always happy, not always easy, not always fun. And
that's true.
And sometimes the people that most follow their intuition are the people that sometimes have the hardest time in life, because it takes them into deeper places, because they're more willing to go into, let's say, daunting places to address their darkness and fear than other people. And also they're doing it on behalf of other people.
That's right.
When you take on when you say yes to spirit, you don't get to decide what that feels like. You don't get to decide, I said yes, I said I'll go there, but I don't like the way this looks or feels. Well, is your yes to spirit, or is your yes to how it feels and looks for you in the moment, and what you make up about it in your ability to see it in the moment called ego, or is it about something broader and wider than you can ever imagine?
That's right.
Giving license to spirit to guide in a way that doesn't feel or look the way you think it should, that's faith.
That is so, you are absolutely right about that. And you are right, because, in doing that myself, yes, it's brought some incredible challenges to me, and incredible, like things that I've had to really face and really look at. And it is easier not to follow intuition sometimes because you stay quote unquote safe, right? You get to just stay in your little cocoon but here's the thing about that. We think we're saving ourselves, and we think that we're, by not following the intuition, that we're going to be safer, and it's going to be easier, and we get to stay in this little corner or whatever. Life has a way of knocking your walls down and making it really hard to the point where you have to now make a decision to follow some guidance, because it's going to,
So go
so you
back to
don't.
the parents, right?
Yeah.
There's parents that are brave enough. They say to me, I'm here because the doctor said I should put my child on drugs. The teacher said I should put my child on drugs, which the teacher shouldn't be saying, but they did.
Mm-hmm.
And here I am, and I have this thing that I just don't feel, it doesn't feel right to me, right? But it's so hard because here's my child with these challenges. Am I just not serving my child because I'm not giving them the chance to be on this drug? Something's telling me not to do it. But so here's intuition at work. Here's listening, right? It's not, oh, right, I got it. It's my intuition. No, you lean into it and you listen and you stay. And there are things that happen and you say, I don't know if this is the right thing, but I'll stay, right? Staying is the most important part of developing your intuition and your relationship with yourself. Stay. Because most of the time when it gets painful, we all leave. But staying is the way that we find out through the pain, go through it into the other side, what's really going on here. So some people are suffering. I mean, the kid is suffering, the father's mad, the parents are mad, the school's mad, everybody's mad, and they're mad at you for leaning. Following.
Yeah.
Maybe you're wrong. Maybe it's not your intuition. It's just that you don't want to drug your kid and you've always thought that's a bad idea, but it's not your intuition, and maybe they're right. That's what I mean by, your faith. You don't always get it right. It's not a journey of ease and flow. No. It's a journey of stay in the moment, do the best you can, and leave the rest to God. That's faith. That's what you can do.
Absolutely. And that's the thing about intuition guidance. And, you don't know the why. Most of the time, when you get that guidance, you're not getting the why. You're not getting if it would be so much easier, right? If we got okay, if you do this, here's why, and it's all going to work out great.
Right. And your kid is,
you don't get that.
Right? And you're feeling terrible that your kid is suffering, and you're thinking this is horrible. And later you find out, if my child hadn't gone through that darkness, then hadn't had that suffering, hadn't worked through that way, then this thing that came up 5-10 years later, they wouldn't be ready for it. And now they are. And now they can be of service to others. But at the time, you just think, I'm just such a bad mom. I can't stop this kid's pain. If you're a good parent, that's what you're thinking. Well, my baby's and I want to stop it.
And you do,
so
right.
You really have to be a partner with life and allow it to be what it is, and be grateful with, when I was a kid, I heard Christ used to say to me, oh, if I say yes to spirit, what happens afterwards is none of my business. So I would hear, good. I would hear God say, I would get a prompt and say, go tell that gentleman what he just said was important. I never heard what the guy said. I didn't know what they were talking about, but I joined the group and smile, look at him and say, wow, what you said is really important. The guy started crying. I didn't know why. I didn't even know what I said. And then I would just be, and that's it. And then it would be my time to go, because I said yes to spirit. I didn't say yes to that guy. Right. I didn't say yes to making sure he was okay and the group was okay. I have no idea. What I did say yes to was spirit, and that's the faithfulness on a vertical alignment. And then the horizontal alignment with others comes next, right? Absolutely. So the vertical alignment it's the trustworthy. How can you be trustworthy? Trust yourself, trust this faith inside of you, and do what it is that you're here to do, and leave the outcome to God, because you don't know. I've had CEOs say to me, I've had CEOs say, oh, well, I vetted these top candidates and I've been recommended with this one, but my gut tells me this, I don't know why. And I look at it and I say, would you like to trust your gut on this, or would you like to go with the evidence? And finally, okay, we're going to go with the gut. And 3 months later, the one candidate that he was going to pick out of the vetted ones finds out that his mother's in trouble. He has to leave. He would have had to quit. He would have left, and he would have been able to do the job. Wow. But we don't have all that information.
You just don't
have all the information. We have our little world. So we have to trust that there's a bigger play going on than our part, and we just play our part as best we can.
I really love that you highlighted that, because so many times we want the evidence first. We want the why first. We want to know first, and then we'll make the decision. And it just typically does not work that way. It is really just the information comes in. We don't own the information. We don't own it, and we also don't own the outcome. That's right. You have to give it up. We have to let go, release the outcome, release the need to know the outcome, and just understand that it is for the great, it is for the greater good and the greater. And it may not always be exactly the way we thought we wanted it.
Right.
But it really is the higher, it serves a higher good, a better outcome, not just for you making the decision, but for others. And we can't possibly know all that going in. We just don't. And so I love that you highlighted that, because it really is a big piece to that puzzle and listening to that guidance. And so I love that you're working with kind of, normal people, really, the parents, and then also, with these CEOs and saying this to them that, intuition is something that is available to all of us. There are highly intuitive people. There are highly empathic people. There are even people who have that psychic ability, right? But that ability isn't left to only those people. It is something that, intuition, I do believe that it's here to guide all of us to a degree. And if we are able to start to trust it and, kind of practice it, in baby steps, we can start to see that it really is something that serves all of us here and really ultimately, one another.
Well, I think that your intuition, the way that your intuition works, is here to support and fuel your purpose.
Mm-hmm,
So
exactly.
that's why I tell people in business, when you start to use your intuition and you're meant and you love and are passionate about what you're doing in business, it'll help you to make faster and more accurate decisions.
Yes.
And strategic decisions as well. But likely if you keep practicing, the chances that you're going to start seeing dead people are pretty low. Because is that part of your purpose? Probably not. Probably not.
Right.
But maybe you start seeing the dead people and you think, well, maybe it is part of my purpose, and then you go off on that direction. So I think the kind of intuition that we have is meant. I mean, I've been a mystic since I was as long as I can remember, and my job in life is to help people find wisdom and the God of their heart in every situation, no matter what it looks like. Mm-hmm. And to be sure that that's there, and how is it there, and how can we be sure it's there even in the darkest of times. So that's my job. So all of the ways that I can see and hear and know spirits, and I'm also a medium, so I talk to people on the other side and all of that. But I'm looking at a soul level. Like if I'm looking at someone on the other side, I'm even saying I tell them that they can't come in unless I call them in. So I'm not walks around seeing dead people because I'm busy. Mm-hmm. So if I call your name, you can come in. So they come in, and what I'm looking at when I'm seeing them is, what was the essential purpose of your work with this person who's asking about you? I don't care if they're a spouse or if they're, and I've seen beautiful things. I've had an older woman who asked about her husband, and I said, there's a ballroom there and it's huge. I said, and he's coming over and he's putting out his hand for you to dance with him. Mm-hmm. And I said, he wants you to dance in this ballroom. Mm-hmm. And then later she told me that they met at ballroom dancing and that they danced every week of their lives until after 50 years he passed away. That's that's usually not what I see, but it's one of those lovely moments that I'm grateful to share.
Yeah.
But I've looked at people who have, been murdered and suicide and on the other side. And the question is, what were you here to learn? And what were they here to learn with you? And did you get it? Did you get it? Did they get it? And as long as we get those lessons, I'm not here to tell you Uncle John's here with his brown tie, because I really don't care. If you want that, there's other mediums that know and see that. That's great. If you just want validation that they're okay, great. That's not why I'm here. I'm here to say, what were you learning? What did you learn? Did you get it? And if you haven't gotten the wisdom, let's get it now, and let's learn from those on the other side. So, and I learn a lot of lessons. There's a lot of wisdom that comes from people in the light. I had a young woman here who, and this is in my book, Mapping into Reality, who she was 21, and her father died in a drive-by shooting in the driveway. They were not in a neighborhood where those things happened. What happened is they learned that it was probably mistaken identity. And
Uh-huh.
she was bereft, of course, and she wanted me to ask him
Mm-hmm.
whether, she should go after, they hadn't found the guy that did it. And she wanted to know if he was upset about that, and did he want them to pursue, and the police and all this and the investigations. And what I saw her father say to me was, he said, first of all, you have to know that the young man who did this to me, I have like the privilege of being connected to him because he shot me. And he said he's a person who thinks his mother hates him and doesn't value his own life. And now I have the privilege of trying to influence him from this side to the other side to try to help him understand he is loved.
Wow.
And none of this world's justice had anything to do with this man's concern.
Yeah.
Wants that boy to learn that he is loved. That transforms his heart, and that's all that matters on the other side. So here's his daughter worried about this kind of justice. And then she said to me, well, guess what? Which I didn't know. He was a coach, and he always took those guys who were the hardest cases under his wings.
Wow.
And he's still doing it on the other side.
He's still doing it. Yeah, that's amazing.
And the other kind of cool thing he said at the end was, he said to her, she said, well, what is it like to be dead? Like, what's it like to be on the other side? And he said, you know how in our family room we have a treadmill and there's a TV right there? And she said, yeah. And he said, well, it's like you're on this treadmill and you're running and you're running and you're running and you're watching the television and you're changing the station and changing the station and changing the station. And then one day you turn the television off and you stop the treadmill and you get off. And there you are. And that's what it's like to be dead.
Really?
Because you're yourself. You're not running the race. You're not looking at television. You're not changing the channels. You're just yourself.
You're just yourself. Yeah.
So he explained it that way. And then, and at the end of the story, he said, when you sit on the couch, he said, I said to him, he's saying there's an Afghan, and put it around you and you'll know he's there. And that's when she said, well, we used to watch television together and we put the Afghan around both of us. So now when I put the Afghan around me, I'll know he's still there. Wow. So, I mean, but from the other side, compassion and love is what they know. They don't need this way of justice. They don't need these kinds of boundaries. The boundaries are limitless on the other side. Love is limitless and it's ever expansive. So that, I mean, I get such a privilege to get to learn all of these kinds of lessons from those who have passed as well as those on this side.
So that is from your book, Mapping a New Reality, Discovering Intuitive Intelligence. And you have videos on intuition as intelligence. So that's amazing. That's an amazing part of your reality and an amazing part of your experience. You get to actually hear from the other side, because that to me is very fascinating. And I've always been very interested in that. I've had some experience with being a medium as well. Sort of, I feel like I've been an accidental medium. So I want to be a bit more of a conscious medium, so that I do allow people in when I want to. And so then, that I'm allowing them in when they need to say something. I've allowed them in not really knowing that they kind of just made their way in. They had a message to give and they really wanted to give it. And I was there and I was open. But it's an interesting thing to provide that window to the other side to come through and say what they have to say. And I'm not sure how deep and involved I want to get into that. I've surrendered to the will, of the divine. So that's part of what I'm supposed to do, and I'm willing. But it's
you have to remember, and I have this wrote this in my book as well, because for a while I was sort of channeling spontaneously and didn't know what to do and wanted to surrender. And I took a course. I was taking meditation classes at Psychic Horizons in San Francisco, and there's a woman named Judy Turgis who was teaching that class. And that day I was just wiggling around, and she said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Well, there's a spirit that wants to come in, and I'm just kind of grounding myself. I'm grounding myself into this." She said, "Well, you could do that, or you could say no." I said, "Really? I could say no?" It's called free will. Yeah. Oh, so since then I've learned that we have free will to shape who comes in, how they come in, when you can tell them, listen, Tuesday night from 7 to 8, all the dead help me out. After that, I'm out. You can, but people don't know that. They think, oh, it's just coming to me, and that's okay if that's what you want. But you have to make a choice. It is your choice how you choose to use your gifts. I could use my gifts to cook, or I could use them to like put all of these little, clairsentient, clairauditing together in a different kind of formula. So I'm cooking people's souls instead of, when I look at people's, like I did a reading for a woman who is a CEO who has just sold her business, and she said, I don't know what to do next. And so she said, can you help me? And I said, sure, I'll give you some other design hints from other lifetimes of what you've done with your work, with your gifts. And I said, okay, so this woman, you have to know, she was a little petite, blonde woman, 5'2" maybe, beautiful. So what I'm looking at is you're this big, fat Italian guy. You have this restaurant in Italy, and everyone in the entire community comes to your restaurant. But here's the thing. So you're a really bad cook. You're not coming for the food. They're not coming for the food. But you make them tell fun stories, joyful stories, and they love to come and talk to each other about it. So they put up with your food so that they can come into the community.
That's awesome.
Said, your gift is to facilitate joy in community. So you're not going to be happy as a psychologist. You don't want to hear their pain. You don't want to hear any conflict. You want to create space for joyful community. So this is what she tells me. She says, well, that's interesting. I said, why? She goes, because every month I have a group of friends that I ask them to come over to my house for dinner, but they have to cook because I cook so badly. They come in, I make them tell really funny stories from the last month that they do. Wow. And she said, and here's the thing, I was just thinking about getting a master's in hospitality management. And she goes, now I get why, because I said, I get it, because you want to feed people, but you want to feed them with the joy of relationship, not with food. She goes, oh, thank goodness, because I wanted this hospitality. I was going to buy a restaurant, and I kept thinking, but I don't like cooking. But I want to buy. So you see, your gift can be applied in many different zones, but there's a uniqueness to that gift. And if you can get to the kernel of it, well, then you can know how to apply it.
Right.
Having to apply it at a restaurant when you don't like cooking.
Yeah. So yes, I'm going to have to see what opens up in that realm. That's interesting that you put it that way. Right. It could be just this little tweak of what we think it is, but what it actually is. So, really looking at it from that perspective. Right. And I like that, having some ownership in that too. And really kind of being the navigator of that, as opposed to having just happening, right. The intuition's happening to me, or the medium and the empath situations or information just happening to me, can really be a little bit more of a navigator of that information.
Remember how I said that staying is the most important part? That's why when I see people who are mediums and they go, is there a J in the room, a J, a K, a John, a Jack, a Jick? It's like, it's not a drive-by shooting. Just sit down and sit with it. You'll get it. I'm like, what? Holy cow. I mean, and they're brilliant people that do that. It's their methodology, and God bless them, but it drives me nuts, because I think it's like watching a drive-by intuitive shooting. Like, maybe it'll did it get you? Did it get you? Did it get you? Like, okay, if you stay and you're quiet, it will come to you.
It will come to you, right?
Name, and you can say the thing itself, but you have to be patient. You have to trust, wait, and see what happens, and develop it. You have to develop it, and people don't want to take the time to stay long enough to develop it. Or if they are, they're in that place, and that's fine. But
that's great. Very interesting. There are a lot of nuances to that world and that realm, and very interesting. So, well, my goodness. Well, I know we're reaching our time here, and I really want to thank you so much. It's been absolutely fascinating. I feel like it's been 5 minutes, and it's just so much we've covered in depth. And I think it's really, really important what you've said and what you've shared. And I can't thank you enough for wanting to participate in this summit, and adding this amazing value to the information that I want to get out there. So thank you so much, Therese.
My pleasure and privilege. Thank you for including me, Jennifer.
You are more than welcome. So now there is the opportunity to provide a free gift. If that's something you do want to do. And do you have something you'd like to give the participants in this summit?
Yeah, well, I typically do hour and a half readings for people, and they're very comprehensive. They include healing and reading and information and all kinds of things. And
Wow.
so I'll be happy to provide those readings for. I have. I'll give you a discount code for the readings, and then people can do that.
Wonderful.
I also do coaching packages for 3 months where I'll do a reading at the beginning and at the end. And that's for people who really want to develop in a particular area. I provide energetic exercises, homework, and those sort of things. And I'll also provide a discount code for you for that.
Beautiful, beautiful. Okay, great. So that'll be available to our participants. They can look at that code, enter that code, and they'll know where to go. So we'll provide that information for everybody. And thank you for that. That's wonderful. I appreciate
My
you
pleasure. My
giving
pleasure.
that.
Thank you,
All right.
Jennifer.
Well, thank you again. Have a beautiful day. And thank you, everybody, for listening in and for watching. And I hope you got as much out of it as I did. It's amazing. Talk to
Thank
you. I
you.
hope to keep in touch.
We will. Thanks, Jennifer. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.